Hey, right, as promised, comparison between the Belstaff Trialmaster and the Barbour International jackets today. But before I get started on that, last Friday's video, sort of my discussion and views on motorcycle armour and its limitations, and a little bit of advice to viewers, sort of expressing my concerns, especially to newcomers to motorcycling, as to, their expectations of what armour can do for them. Because, I've witnessed it, sometimes expectations of what it's capable for sort of exceed its actual capabilities. It was a video intended to provoke thought and encourage riding safety, really. And for the most part, we got a good mix of comments in that video that, sort of swung both ways. And that's what the video was intended to do. It was intended to provoke thought. So, mission accomplished. Now, as an upshot from that video, there were two things that sort of stick in my mind that cropped up. One was a personal message from a salesman associated with a particular armoured motorcycle clothing company, who apparently didn't like the tone of that video, and I'm not going to say who it was, but he really didn't like what I said in that video, and sort of reading between the lines, I think his main concern was that it might affect his bottom line in some way. And I've got no idea how we might have come to that conclusion, because I was encouraging people to wear armour if they want to. But I did come away from what was a very short conversation with the impression that money was more important than safety. Again, it was a prime example of this sort of shaming cancel culture thing that we keep coming across whenever you talk about armour. I don't really know what to say about that. Maybe selling motorcycle clothing bestows you with a better experience and education of what actually happens during motorcycle accidents, as opposed to someone who spent 15 years visiting the scenes of fatal and serious injury motorcycle accidents, scraping up the remains of motorcyclists with a shovel and dispensing them into rubble sacks, and then liaising with the coroner and acting as a professional witness both in coroner's court and in the Crown Court. I obviously misspent my youth. Now, the other thing that cropped up was the use of the word armour in advertising PPE for motorcyclists. That's personal protection equipment, because that's what it is, that's what the legislation calls it, yet a lot of manufacturers refer to it as armoured clothing. Now, I've never put any thought into this myself, but I think at least 3 commenters came up with the assertion that calling it armour and advertising it as armour is misleading because it's not really armour. And the position of these commenters that, basically calling armoured motorcycle clothing armoured is misleading people into thinking that actually, its capabilities are higher than it actually is. And, when they said it, I've got to admit, it was one of those light bulb moments where, I'm in two minds about it. I'm not really sure what to think. I did have a quick look at the definition of armour in several dictionaries, and going by the strict definitions given there, it doesn't apply to something like PPE clothing because it's protective equipment, but it doesn't really qualify as armour. I'm not sure. I would like to hear other people's thoughts on this in the comments section for this video. It would be interesting to see what the mass opinion of this is. Do you think that the term armoured clothing is misleading, especially, when we're talking about newcomers to this pastime of motorcycling, and perhaps gives them an overinflated idea of its capabilities? Let me know in the comments section, because just about every PPE manufacturer does it. Right, so on to this comparison of the Belstaff Trialmaster jacket and the Barbour International jacket. Here we go. So let's be clear from the start so that there are no misunderstandings. I've dealt with this in the individual reviews of these two jackets. I'll deal with it again now. These are both reissues of jacket models that emerged in the late 1940s, they are built pretty much to the same specification as they were then, and back then they were considered legitimate motorcycle clothing. Things have changed now, but these were still considered and sold as motorcycle clothing, certainly until the early 1990s. This was the kind of kit that was available when I started riding. In fact, my first proper motorcycle jacket was a Belstaff Trialmaster trophy. In about 1983, that jacket served me well for about 2 decades. Now, waxed cotton is a very durable material. I'm not sure of the exact specifications regarding abrasion wear, and I will say that back in the day it wasn't considered to be as good as leather, and it probably isn't as good as sort of Dyneema or Cordura or any of those other materials that are touted to be ballistics grade materials. But it is pretty resilient stuff. I had a few spills in my old Belstaff and it never had a mark on it. Now, having said that, it is not considered legitimate PPE, and you can bring it up to spec by putting something like an armoured, in inverted commas, action vest underneath if you want to. And my main reason for reviewing these jackets is that, you know, the vast majority of people that watch this channel are people like me of a similar age group. They remember these products back then, and it's a trip down memory lane. It's nostalgia. Right, now we've got that out of the way, a brief history of these two garments. The Barbour International jacket was released in 1947 after about a decade, maybe a little bit more, of development on the behalf of Barbour. In its first year, it was a very successful product. So on the back of that, Belstaff, which was a lesser known motorcycle clothing company, brought a copy out, the Belstaff Trialmaster. And 1947 with the Barbour International and 1948 with the Belstaff Trialmaster marked the birth of two iconic motorcycle jackets. But in a way, both for different reasons. The Barbour International was the benchmark. It was, if you like, the Rolls Royce of the two jackets. It was born from years of research and development, and became the choice of both, you know, amateur riders like me and you, and professional riders. Now, Barbour had been around since the 1880s, whereas Belstaff was a relatively new company starting, I think, about 1926. So when it came to reputation and heritage, they quite simply couldn't compete with Barbour. They had to find another way of doing it. Obviously, they saved on research and development because the Belstaff Trialmaster was a copy of the Barbour International, which immediately gave them a financial advantage, but they cut corners a little bit further so that they could place the price of this jacket substantially lower than Barbour. In fact, even in the early 1980s, when I first got my Belstaff Trialmaster trophy, it was 20% cheaper than a standard Barbour International. I got the Belstaff Trialmaster for £50, including the sewn-in quilted thermal lining, whereas the Barbour International was unlined at £60, with the, you know, clip-in lining being an optional extra. It was in effect a bargain compared to the Barbour, so more people were able to afford the Belstaff and more people wore them. It competed on price, and it was very successful at doing that. But they did cut some corners. The standard Belstaff Trialmaster was a 6-ounce Miller-in waxed cotton, whereas the Barbour International was constructing using a heavier duty 8-ounce Miller-in waxed cotton. On the Barbour, the iconic map pocket was designed specifically to fit a standard Ordnance Survey map of the day. The whole jacket was designed to be a workhorse for its intended purpose. Belstaff took a slightly different approach. They copied the slanted pocket, but it was nowhere big enough for an Ordnance Survey map, which saved them money on materials. And they played a similar trick with the double storm flap closure, which wasn't as generous as the Barbour, but was good enough to do the job. In actual fact, whereas the Barbour was, if you like, over-engineered, the Belstaff was cut back to the bare bones that were acceptable, for example the zips. Now in both these modern reissues I don't think they're using the same brand of zip that they would have used back in the day. They're probably, those companies are out of business now. But whereas Belstaff went for a one-way 3/4 length zip to save a bit of cash and get the price of the jacket down, the already well-established Barbour had a full-length 2-way zip that was arguably more versatile and was better at keeping the drafts out not just on the bike but off it as well. And these features are all plain to see on these reissues. They are faithful recreations of the original jackets. Now this all sounds a little bit negative towards the Belstaff, but as well as taking things away, they also gave things back. The heavier weight 8-ounce Miller wax cotton used on the Barbour was obviously superior. On the whole, this jacket feels much more substantial. And obviously from a rider's perspective, this would give a slight advantage in the advent of a crash, because it has a higher abrasion resistance to the 6-ounce used in the Belstaff. And Belstaff got around this by effectively doubling up the thickness of the material at the shoulders and the elbows, giving the equivalent of a 12-ounce Miller in those two areas. This also, especially at the shoulders, enhanced its waterproofing capabilities. You know, wax does wear off over time, and the seams at the shoulders are one of the areas where it first starts to let water in to let you know that it needs reproofing. And in those respects, Belstaff managed to increase the specification of the jacket in a way making it superior to that of the Barbour. Another area where its design sort of helps the modern rider is that the cuffs are a little bit more generous so that you can easily slip a glove underneath your cuffs and fasten them up securely, whereas the Barbour is a much tighter fit around the cuffs. Now, I'm told that there was a reason for that, and the reason is that most motorcycle riders at the time wore gauntlets. So they weren't designed to be able to slip a glove underneath, they were designed to be able to easily fit a gauntlet over the sleeve. But it is a sort of one or the other approach. Generally speaking, I have to leave the cuffs unfastened to be able to slip a glove underneath, which, you know, isn't ideal. Whereas the Belstaff will function well with gloves that slip underneath the cuff and it'll still fasten easily, or you could still put gauntlets over it without an issue. Right, so fit and finish. From a quality perspective, there's nothing really between these two jackets. I've been wearing the Barbour jacket now getting on for 4 years. I mean, it's not my everyday jacket, but it has had a reasonable amount of wear and tear, and I have had to reproof it recently. It's a really well put together jacket. Now, because of the 8-ounce Miller it does have a more robust and substantial feel to it. It's quite a relaxed jacket in warm weather, but it does stiffen up substantially in cold weather, which can affect the way that it drapes. I would say it's possibly the less stylish of the two jackets. It's function over form. As I said, this is a modern day reissue of the genuine article from 1947. The cut is a little bit shorter than that of the Belstaff, and the fit is a little bit more sort of boxy or baggy. Now, one thing that I will say is that although I filmed these two videos only a couple of weeks apart, I did lose a little bit of weight between sort of showcasing the Barbour and the Belstaff, but I don't honestly think that that had much impact on the way it fitted. Now, freedom of movement in the Barbour jacket is fantastic, especially around the arms and the shoulders. It's a little bit more restricted on the Belstaff. 1 or 2 people commented that the Belstaff was too big for me. I disagree with that because I could have gone down one size, and I have tried them on in the shops. But A, as with both jackets, I wanted enough room under them to be able to either fit armour or layer up with some warmer clothing if need be. And B, one size down and from the upper arm to the shoulder in the Belstaff, I felt too restricted. It was very tight in that area, so I plumped for this larger size. Now, the overall effect of that is it might look a little bit longer than it should. Although I have looked at the length in this video and compared it with the illustrations on the Belstaff website, and it seems to drop to about the same height as that illustrated on their models. So bearing that in mind, I think the fit is about right. Now remember, this is a 1948 reissue, and the style then was to wear these baggy so that you could layer up underneath, and it was exactly the same with the Barbour. One thing is for certain, if I'd got the next size down with this jacket, there's no way I would have been able to get a jumper or anything else underneath it, not comfortably anyway. The lining in both of these jackets looks very similar. It's a sort of a tartan design in cotton. And the video of this actually doesn't show it up well enough, but the Barbour is a much smoother, almost shiny, almost canvas type material, which can feel a bit cold to the skin. And I would say, all in all, this jacket's insulation properties in its, sort of off-the-shelf form without any sort of liner or anything, it does feel a bit colder than the Belstaff. The Belstaff, by contrast, has more of a combed or nap flannel finish to it, which does create a lot of insulation. This jacket is much warmer, despite the shell being made from a much thinner material. The Belstaff Trialmaster does seem to be a more flattering, tailored fit. I mean, obviously this is going to vary from person to person on your build, and the longer cut does assist with that. The darker colour might also have a bearing on the way it looks. But of the two, the Barbour feels like the more practical of the two, especially if you're riding. The one big issue between these jackets, of course, is price. Now, Barbour is a huge international company. I was talking to an authorised dealer a few weeks ago, and I found it quite unbelievable, but I've got no reason to disbelieve him. Including all the different colour variants of all sort of garments and items that they sell, and different size variations, they have a list of 32,000 different products. Yeah, 32,000. I found it quite unbelievable when he told me, but I've got every reason to believe it, what he said to me. They're still owned by the same family, the Barbour family, whereas the Belstaff has changed ownership once or twice over recent years. Now, this is just supposition on my part, but I believe that Belstaff is a smaller production run based firm, so they won't have the same economy scale advantages that Barbour has, and add to that the fact that they do a lot of high profile advertising. That costs money. It will be put onto the retail cost of the all the garments that they sell. Generally speaking, at retail with Barbour you're looking at £295, which I think is reasonable for what you're getting, and the icing on the cake is that if you shop around you can find it discounted even further. Belstaff is a completely different matter. The price is now bloated out to a £495 recommended retail price. And comparing the jackets side by side, I would say that the Belstaff is certainly overpriced by at least £200. And your chances of finding it discounted, as I did on this occasion, are minimal. Now, I've thought about this long and hard, and you're getting nothing extra for that overinflated price. In fact, if anything, you're getting less than you get with the Barbour. For a start, you don't have that original sort of rich heritage. Neither of these jackets, as far as I've been able to tell, are still made in the UK. They're both made in Eastern European countries, as far as I know. I have actually written to both companies, several times with Barbour and back in November regarding Belstaff for more information, with a view to carrying this review out. Neither responded to me, so I'm guessing a little bit about the origin of these garments. But there's nothing on the labelling or anything else that suggests that they are made in the UK. Now, putting the price to one side, I do feel that with the Barbour you're getting a more honest and genuine product for your money. Whereas the modern Belstaffs do have an air of pretense about them. I can't really put my finger on what it is, because the quality is very similar, the level of detailing is very similar. It just doesn't feel as real as the Barbour. It's still a damn nice jacket though. Now, regarding the ladies' heirloom Belstaff, I know I promised that I would showcase that in this video. Unfortunately, my partner has been very busy with work and I've not been able to sort of schedule her in for me to do the filming on that. So let me know, ladies that are out there watching this video, or even gents that are looking to maybe procure one for the partners, if that's still something that you're interested in, and I'll see what I can do. Right, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. You know I appreciate it. I'd also appreciate it if you would leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. It does help the channel to progress. I can't emphasise just how much difference that kind of activity makes. Now, if you want to help me out in other ways, you can do that via my Patreon page, or you can click on the Super Thanks button down below. Any assistance is greatly appreciated. It does help me to produce this kind of video. Now, I am of course going to be back next week, so until then, please, ride safely, and I'll see you soon.